Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the El Cajon City Council meeting. The meeting is now called to order. I'd like to ask the city clerk to please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Kendrick is absent. All others are present.
Thank you. Would you all stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and then remain standing for a brief moment of silence afterwards? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. The city clerk posted orders of adjournment of the February 11th, 2025 meeting and the agenda of the February 25th, 2025 meeting in accordance with state law, city council, and housing authority policy. There are no presentations on today's agenda. And we're now at agenda changes. Staff, do you have any?
No, sir.
Council? All right. That brings us to consent items. Consent items are routine matters enacted by one motion according to the recommendation listed below. With the concurrence of the city council, a council member or person in attendance may request a discussion of a consent item at this time. But let's start with council. In other words, do you want to pull any of the consent items? Okay, staff, how about you?
No, sir.
Angela, do you have any speaker cards for consent items?
We do not, sir.
Then I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent items. Second. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
That brings us to public comment. At this time, any person may address a matter within the jurisdiction of the City Council, Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency that is not on the agenda. Comments relating to items on today's agenda are to be taken at the time that the item is heard. However, state law prohibits discussion or action on items not on the agenda. City Council and Housing Authority members may briefly respond to statements or questions, and an item may be placed on a future agenda. Angela, do we have any speaker cards for public comment?
Yes, sir, we do. We have 4. The first one is from Brenda Hammond.
And we're back to 3 minutes, right? Okay. Hello, Brenda. Welcome.
I never take up that whole 3 minutes anyway. You know that.
Well, it's your right to do so.
So, I wanted to tell you that I name dropped El Cajon at another council meeting in Lemon Grove because, everybody's all upset about the tiny homes. And I'm trying to tell them, hey, it's working in other cities. You're spending all this time getting all upset. I said, first stop El Cajon and ask them how it's working for them. They're just not checking it out. They need to, anyway. So I just wanted to tell you I name dropped El Cajon. That's all. I always tell on myself, even when I was a teenager. So just to remind you that, remember, red, I made them smaller. Red and blue makes purple, so hopefully we can all get along, but I like the red. Sorry. And I'm trying to have fun, because I'm trying to be in a happy mood. And I'm not going to crack. Thank you.
Thank you. Phil, do you need this pen back?
Carlos Gomez Perez.
Hello, sir. Welcome.
How's it going, Council? 2 issues I want to comment on. Last week, 2 weeks ago, you guys talked about doing a Veterans Memorial in El Cajon. And you guys were summing the fact that you wanted to spend $500,000 on the memorial? To commemorate who? That's my question. You guys were talking about raising the statue. But one thing that you guys keep forgetting, unless I'm mistaken, how many of you are veterans? Wars are not won by officers. They're not won by pilots. They're won by people on the ground. Fallujah veteran, been shot twice. So I think maybe if we wanted to spend $500,000 on the memorial, we should try and spend the money on the veterans that are in El Cajon City something that can help us. I know what it feels like to be a ghost or invisible for 20 years because of mental health. So maybe instead of wasting all the money on another memorial that's going to have a nice plaque because I made it or I decided to do it, we should try and talk about doing a different type of memorial that will commemorate the veterans that are living, that are still here, the ones that matter, the ones that need our help. How many of us veterans are still here that have mental help and struggling on the daily? The battle is not the war. The war was easy. We loved it. Some of us loved it because it meant staying alive. Now we're back home. We no longer have that support. So I think that you should consider spending that much money on a veteran memorial in Cajon and thinking about something different that can encompass helping the veteran community that you currently have living in our country or in the city. That's one. Second of all, SB 54 passed. You guys went along the lines of saying public safety. Steve Gobble, you mentioned the whole fact about running a checkpoint. I want to ask you personally, how many checkpoints have you conducted in your lifetime? Any? You haven't? I conducted several checkpoints, stateside and in other countries. I know for a fact that we have primary, secondary, and tertiary means of defense. So next time that we want to throw public safety around, let's state facts, let's take what information that we know, instead of just saying hearsay or trying to intimidate or scare the constituents that have no idea what a checkpoint consists of. That's the only thing I have. But primarily, it's the veteran memorial that I think is a waste of money that can be implemented in some other ways. Veteran community, homeless community, or other means to help the ones that are still here, not the ones that have passed. That's what I have to say.
I just want to answer. So first off, I appreciate what you did. I have a son who kicked down doors in Afghanistan, and I know what him and all his guys went through when they came home, and I totally understand that, and I respect you for what you've done. I just want to say that the Veterans Memorial is money that we're going to raise, not spend. And I think that there's room to do both. I think you're absolutely right. I think that there's a lot of room for nonprofits and other groups to try to help out the veteran who's struggling with mental health issues, who's struggling with alcohol and drug issues, who's struggling with housing issues, employment issues. And I am, having watched my son transition back home, I am saddened by the lack of opportunities that him and his friends all had. And so I think you're absolutely within your rights to suggest that, and I think we can do both.
No, and I agree with that too. Like I said, I'm not saying no to a memorial. I'm saying like let's talk about how the money can, if it's going to be raised. If you already accounted for $500,000, you won't need $500,000 to raise the memorial, but the rest of the money can be allocated for other ways to help. Like I said, help the live-in veteran community that you currently have in the city.
As we go through this process, we're going to be asking for people to be involved in the planning of this, and I think your voice would be very, very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I don't mind,
Yeah.
I was going to say that exact same thing. We've been going out to the different veterans organizations and getting feedback, and I think that's an outstanding idea. I just recently was able to get my father, who's a veteran, housing. He's homeless through the VASH program. And I've volunteered for years at VVSD, Veterans Stand Down Event for Homeless. So I am infinitely intimate with all of the issues and in the veteran community with PTSD. Donnie O'Malley, I don't know if you follow him.
Yeah, I know who he is.
Yeah, I went to college with him. He's a good friend of mine. And so I've supported him in his Silky's hikes. But I think it's an outstanding idea that, we raise the money, and it's not just to have a nice statue, but we got to help people out.
It goes to the same point. Like I said, we have plenty of statues of officers, plenty of statues of airmen or captains or whatever, but like I mentioned, we're the ones making the fight happen. We're
Yep.
there kicking down doors,
Yeah.
taking names to ensure that we're still alive. Sorry, I won't go over the time limit.
Well, it's okay. We're having a discussion.
Yeah, no,
But
I
yeah,
appreciate it.
so
Yeah.
I
Yeah, it's a
appreciate
great
you
idea.
having that open-mindedness to go ahead and go through with that.
Yeah.
And the reason that most, like me, I've been back for 20 years, and I actually went to the VA and got treatment. But a lot of guys that I can't come back with, they don't go to the VA because they believe, unfortunately, that if you ask for help, you're not man enough. If you ask for help, you're weak. And I tell them, I'm like, okay, I was there, I was man enough to have your back 20 years ago in the streets of Fallujah, but now 20 years back home, I'm not man enough to give me a call at night, like, hey, I'm not feeling that well tonight. So something needs to be really, truly addressed, and there's some solutions out there if they're willing to be discussed. Thank you.
Just a quick question. Where did you serve? What branch?
I was in the Marine Corps, and I did go to Iraq in 03. I helped rescue Jessica Lynch in 03. And went back in 04. And in 04, I got to meet the Blackwater guys that got dragged and burned the bridge. Worked with them for 2 days, and then they happened. Then we had to retrieve them from the bridge. And I finally, April 26 of 04, I was shot twice. I was shot in the face, I was shot in the shoulder, and I got out with a Silver Star. And a kick in the butt for playing.
Man,
So,
thanks for coming today.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. God bless you.
Melusina Faust.
Hello, Mary.
Hi, good afternoon. Melusina Faust here. And so I just had a few things to talk about. First of all, I'm so happy to see such civic engagement from our young people. It's so important. I don't know if this is a school program that does it, but it does my heart happy, and whatever teacher is doing that, keep it up. Second of all, reference to the veterans. I think that's an excellent point. I do like memorials in the sense that it shows the next generation what was sacrificed before them. And I know growing up, I've been to very many memorials, and it's actually one of the towns, Fountain Hills, Arizona, has a very nice memorial. So I would like to see that, but in a nod to what this gentleman said, I do think there's a place to carry it forward to active engagement for current veterans and that are trying to find their way. And one suggestion I would have, and I have no idea the legalities, technicalities, being counterpart of it, but consider perhaps maybe giving like a 5% property tax discount. And that way you could entice more veterans to move to El Cajon and then contribute and be part of that fabric. So that's just something to consider. And then lastly, I just came from the Board of Supervisors, and it's very, to use a politely, dysfunctional there. There's not a lot of respect shown to the speakers, so I do appreciate everybody listening and engaging and being participating. One last thing is I found out today on Twitter that there's some kind of legislation going that's going to restrict self-defense in your own home, like the Castle Doctrine. I know we don't have the complete Castle Doctrine here like they do in other states, but it was going to make it even more restrictive, that it would limit your ability to defend yourself, and even in your own home, for, I think, manslaughter. So I would urge you to put a resolution that opposes that bill and to take that on, because people absolutely have a right to self-defense, especially in their own home, and we need to stand for it. You've stood strongly for other things, and I'm asking you to stand for that, whether it's a 2A or just that you're loving your family and protecting them. Thank you very much.
Just one quick thing about the property taxes. Property taxes assessed by the state and the county, so we don't have any jurisdiction over that.
Okay, I didn't know if they're were bonds or something where you could reduce or pay, whatever little love you could give the veterans.
But there might be something we can think of to honor veterans.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the.
Yeah, everybody
I appreciate it.
appreciates a little financial love. So, okay, thank you so much.
Well, let me finish the speakers, and I'll have you come back up, sir. Yes.
Truth.
Hi, I'm going to counter Brenda. I name drop El Cajon when I tell people about good food. I appreciated that there's a little card with a hotline for help for veterans at the speaker card table. About the Veterans Memorial, is there an arts commission to discuss the details? Gary had an idea for a statue of an aviator, and he said he, but why not she? Why not a female aviator? You've got to think outside the box a little. And I appreciate the welcome video on the city council page with Chris. Chris has done a great job at being a city spokesman. It was a very informative video. The county actually just made an informative welcome video too, but it tells a tall tale about how the supervisors actually care and want to hear from people. Oh, such a laugh. And next budget that you guys have, invest in better mics or audio equipment for this meeting room, because it's been horrible for years. I even heard a certain news crew was very unsatisfied. And last meeting, I appreciated those that chose to be more respectful. I'm disappointed in those who chose not to be. I still recommend individual removal of the disruptors versus recess timeouts that function as collective punishment rather than addressing the individual childish behaviors. There was even a foolish person who laughed when I thanked the police for being strategically positioned around the building. Well, for anyone who's ignorant of real safety concerns of women, I'm very happy to share my personal stories about having to hear negative, intimidating comments on my way out, or even about the time I was followed home. See, it's easy for paid change agents to laugh when they only go to meetings and groups they're paid to be a part of, like the one that happened on the Tuesday. Saw some familiar faces there too. And last meeting, Michelle, you said something about we have the screenshot of Amy's email. Who is we exactly? Is that you and Miriam from East County Magazine who was sitting at the back of the room? You should be more transparent in your gaslighting attacks upon speakers because it actually made the news again. And Steve, a speaker, mentioned Patricia Mondragon and Alliance San Diego's opinions as if they hold some kind of special importance weight to you. Do they? Is that the same Mondragon name Michelle mentioned at a previous meeting as being close to? And Gary said many ridiculous things, too many. Number one would be the word democracy. We're not a democracy, we're a constitutional republic. And he said 1/3 of residents are Hispanic, another third are probably Middle Eastern, and both are maybe scared. What about the 1/3 that's something else? I guess they don't matter. Then he went from saying people will be afraid to shop to saying people will be afraid to go to the hospital. I'm going to argue they probably should be. A lot of people go there to die. And to Bill's point about actual El Cajon residents' opinions on immigration, I know for a fact that the last meeting had people from as far away as Oceanside. And there's nothing wrong with showing up when you care, but it is something to note. And I'm really happy I took part in that event because I got to talk to some old friends, see people at CBS, I like them too, and even receive compliments and respect from people from all sides, my favorite one being, I wish you were on our side. Thank you.
Thank you, Truth. Sir, do you want to come back and finish up?
I want to comment on what you spoke about 5%. The only way that the county or the state, the United States or California in general can only give you any stipend or any kind of tax break is if you're 100% disabled. That's it. Being 100% disabled is the only way that guarantees you having any tax breaks. Right now, the tax rate for 100% disabled is $176,000 off of your properties. So that's California. When I'm in Texas, is if you're 100% disabled, you get to pay no tax at all. So unfortunately, regarding your question, there's nothing that can be done, at least by the city, unless someone puts a movement to try and make the 176 to make it total. But in order for you to get 100% disabled, it takes time. It took me 16 years. So if you imagine if I was injured to the severity I was, it took me 16 years. How about the guys that don't have any physical injuries? So it takes longer.
It is a very difficult thing to achieve. Thank you for clarifying that for us. Is that the end of the speakers?
No more speakers, sir.
Okay. There are no written communications and no public hearings on today's agenda. We have 2 administrative reports on today's agenda. Item 8 is the mid-year report for fiscal year 24 and 25. And I'd like to ask staff to come up and tell us about this item. Hi, Clay.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, distinguished members of the City Council. My name is Clay Shane. I'm the Director of Finance for the City of El Cajon. I'm here today to present the fiscal year 25 mid-year report. Today's brief presentation will cover the FY25 mid-year report, primarily checking in on the status of the general fund and the wastewater fund. We do have some housekeeping for the 25 budget, and we'll discuss those budget amendments in a moment. And then I want to briefly touch on the upcoming events, the 5-year business plan and the fiscal year 26 annual budget. One thing before I get going that I do want to point out is a little bit of a change in format in this report. In previous years, we have presented the mid-year and the 5-year together. However, this year we have separated them so they can follow separate timelines. So jumping right in with general fund revenue. As many of us are feeling, sales tax and property taxes are both a little soft this year, coming in just slightly under expectation. However, we are seeing expected or stronger than expected performance in other categories. We are anticipating at this point total general fund revenues to total $99.1 million at year end. That's against the $98.1 million budget. On the expenditure side, we are projecting to overshoot salaries and benefits a bit and come in under on material, supplies, and services, as well as coming in as expected in other categories. We're anticipating total general fund expenditures of $102 million against the budget of $101 million. We began the fiscal year with total general fund reserves of $63.7 million. That is the total of all reserve categories, and we'll talk about those in a moment. As we just stated, revenues are approximately $1 million better than anticipated, and we're currently expecting expenditures to be over by $1 million as well. However, I do want to point out that this is only halfway through the year that we're basing these projections on, and with only being 1% off, we are definitely working within our margin of error. So please don't hold us too strictly to those numbers. With those projections, we are anticipating total general fund equity to end the year with $60.8 million, which is slightly better than the $60.7 we anticipated when we adopted the budget. As far as reserve categories go, this breaks up what we anticipate the various reserve levels to be when we redesignate those along with the adoption of the FY26 budget. At year end, we're anticipating the 20% operating reserve and the economic uncertainty reserve to both be just north of $20 million, and the reserve for unfunded pension liabilities of $13 million. That leaves the carryover reserve at approximately $7 million at year end. And again, that ties to the 60.8 we just showed on the previous slide. Changing channels to the wastewater enterprise fund, we started the year with total fund equity of approximately $52.6 million. We're anticipating revenues to come in stronger than anticipated by $2.5 million at a total of $37.9 million at year end. However, expenditures we're anticipating being significantly under budget by $17.4 million. But I want to point out that the majority of this difference is due to capital projects. This fund type includes both operating expenses and capital in the same fund. In that $17 million difference, about $15 million of that are CIP projects. All that taken into consideration, we're anticipating ending the year at $61.9 million. But of course, as I just said, $15 million of that will be capital appropriations that carry over to the following fiscal year. Moving on to the FY25 budget housekeeping. We have three primary categories of amendments that we propose. The first is carryover funding. These are items that the procurement started prior to the end of last fiscal year, and for a number of reasons, we did not receive the good or service by June 30th. Those obligations carried over into the new year. However, funding did not automatically, so we request City Council to take action to reappropriate the funding. In this case, we have a single item. It's a piece of wastewater equipment. And I just wanted to read this in the presentation, a Gap Vax hydro excavator for just shy of $700,000. For appropriation adjustments, we have a total of 10 adjustments requested, the largest of which is the appropriation and creation of a new capital project for electric vehicle charging stations for our city fleet. This is a $3.3 million appropriation amongst its three funding sources. Additionally, we are requesting an additional $400,000 of fire department overtime from strike teams. That is offset by revenue that those expenditures generated. Additionally, we had a timing difference with the final Heartland Fire and Rescue JPA payment from last year. It was not made in time to be included in last fiscal year. So this year we effectively have 5 quarterly payments. So we're requesting an appropriation for approximately $139,000 to catch up on that. We also are requesting an additional $125,000 in fleet maintenance expenses for additional unanticipated repairs. In addition to those four, which are the largest four adjustments, there are six more that are less than $100,000 each. For personnel adjustments, we have a small number of adjustments requested at mid-year, only one of which is an additional FTE. That is the addition of a deputy director position in the restructured Public Works Department. We are not requesting any appropriation change at this time, and that position will be funded this year with vacancy savings from another position. Additionally, we request the addition of a deputy city manager and the reduction of the HR director. We have two positions with the Heartland Fire and Rescue JPA. These are positions that were previously staffed by employees in the other Heartland cities. However, through the promotion process, City of El Cajon employees were promoted into these positions. This change is just a change in authorization and a little bit of moving around money, but it does not represent additional cost to the city. It's just changing the form. And lastly, we have the reclassification of a crew leader to a maintenance supervisor in the Public Works Department Parks Maintenance Division. Moving on to our upcoming events. The next time you will see us is the presentation of the FY25 five-year business plan. We currently are anticipating that to be at the first meeting in April. And following that, should everything go as planned, we expect to present and introduce the draft FY26 annual budget to the City Council on June 10th, and then ask for adoption on the 24th. So as it relates to the mid-year, staff recommends that the City Council receives and accepts the mid-year report, as well as increase or modifies the appropriations, authorize the proposed capital expenditures, and the proposed personnel changes detailed in this report. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thanks, Clay. I appreciate that. A question of Graham first. When we do make a motion on this, do we need separate motions, or can we do it all in one?
Yeah, for this, it's all at one.
Oh,
Would be
okay.
fine.
Questions or comments? No? Yes?
Clay, thank you for your presentation. Very quickly, when we were talking about the wastewater being under budget, 17 million, am I understanding it correctly in characterizing it as we have capital improvement projects that money is earmarked for, but it's just going to move over into the next fiscal year? Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And Mr. Ortiz, I can elaborate a little bit. As
Okay.
you remember, we are feverishly trying to spend the ARPA funding. So a lot of our engineering staff attention went to spending those.
Oh, okay.
So some of those other wastewater projects were put on the back burner.
Got it.
So now that those projects are wrapped up, they'll start ramping
We start
up.
using our money
Yeah.
instead of using the federal government. I love it. Okay. And then the electric vehicle upgrade, is that California Air Resources Board requirement? Why are we upgrading to or doing that?
Correct. So state law is, through the Air Resources Board, is requiring us to start converting our fleet to half of the purchases that we make in the next couple of years. To half of them have to be electric vehicles, including public works vehicles, and soon 100%. We are, in fact, Mr. DiMaggio is working on some legislation right now that would prevent or prohibit or classify public works vehicles as emergency vehicles. If you look at the Los Angeles fires, there's police cars involved, there's fire trucks involved, there's helicopters involved, but there's a lot of public works trucks involved, right? And so imagine if there was no electricity available, we would be incapacitated as a city without public works vehicles. So we're working on some legislation to classify those vehicles. However, and we also know that the grid cannot support
All those
what the
electric
request
vehicles,
is.
right.
However, there are some opportunities, so maybe once in a lifetime opportunity to secure some grants to help pay for the majority of the electrification of our fleet, including the installation of charging stations. And so this money will be parlayed with those monies to make that happen.
Okay. Do we know, is it purely electric or is it the plug-in hybrid, so half electric, half gas-powered? Or is it all electric? Do we know?
It's my understanding that it's all electric.
All electric. Okay, what a terrible idea. And for the June, could we get update on the bonds, the bonds for our unfunded liabilities for
The POBs, the
POBs.
pension obligation
Yeah.
bonds.
Could that be part of the report too?
Yep,
There's an update
absolutely.
on that. Okay. Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Steve.
Let's go back to one of the earlier slides, talking about revenue and expenses, 101 million versus 103 million or something like that. Let's go back. It's one of the first, probably within the first 4 slides.
I think you skipped it.
Yeah, there we go. So we budgeted 70.7. We think they're coming in at 73.2. Is that a function of the budget thought there would be vacancies and we filled those vacancies and that's why we're spending more?
No, personnel expenditures citywide are not any greater or less than anticipated. The difference that we're seeing there is the actual performance of where general fund staff are charging their time versus where they were anticipated to charge are different, and that's the primary driver of that difference.
And would that be charging it to a capital program versus a general expense?
Well, this is another great example. So if we have an engineer that we thought was going to be working on wastewater projects, but they're working on a lot of ARPA projects, which would be a general funded, then they would shift their time to that. So that would have some influence there.
So then we should expect a savings perhaps on the other side where we had budgeted that engineer to work on the wastewater side, that wastewater should have less of that person's salary since it was charged. I'm trying to see, is this incremental or is this a wash?
No, this is not a wash. Next year, it may not be as great of an impact on the general fund because we're going to shift some of our attention back to those other projects. But this is not a wash because we did spend our time, our staff time was allocated more towards general fund activities this year than we thought it was going to be.
Right, so that means there's another area where it was not as much as you thought it would be.
Hence the wastewater or
Okay,
other gas tax, things
So,
like that.
so the capital
Yes.
programs have less payroll expense because it got moved over to
Yes,
general.
it's a wash there.
That's exactly
From
what
a
I'm trying to
general
say.
fund perspective, it's not a wash though, yes.
Yes, I understand. And then the carryover reserve, it's maybe the next slide or the one after that. There you go. It went from 13.3 down to 7. Help me remember why it dropped 6 million.
Well, there's a couple of things that are taking place here. The first one I want to point out is if you look at the change in total fund balance, it is reduced by just shy of $3 million. And you can kind of see it on this slide, the difference between the budget for revenues and expenditures. That is the $2 million for overhire of the 10 police officers, as well as I believe, an electronic marquee installation for the Parks and Recreation Department. So that's part of it. The other part of it, and this hasn't happened, we're anticipating it to happen. We will present it as part of the adoption of the budget, but typically these reserves that are set as a percentage of expenditures, when the expenditure changes, the reserve requirement that goes with it changes, and you'll see those, well, 20% grows from 18.7 million to 20 million. So part of it is the intentional use of reserves that we're experiencing, and the rest of it is the reclassification of what we have.
Okay, great, thank you.
Michelle, did you have any? When it comes to wastewater, the discrepancy in expenditures, was that due to the tunnel collapse under the freeway?
I suppose in some indirect way there is. So the city did have additional expenditures related to that emergency. There was additional budget added for that purpose. So the difference, the leftover, the savings is not really driven by it. However, staff, that same wastewater staff that responded to the emergency may have been working on other projects. So indirectly, that may have driven that.
The point of my question is basically, is this a one-time event, or should we anticipate this to happen again?
It's pretty typical. The timeline for CIPs, and this is one of the problems with a fund that kind of commingles multi-year expenditures with single-year operating activity. The pattern for CIP is frequently you'll collect money in advance of the project. Sometimes that project takes several years to take place, and during that period, you will show savings as a result. So I'd say it's very typical.
Okay, sounds good. Was that also the cost of that equipment that we have to buy for the wastewater department?
That is included in these projected numbers, yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, thank you. Hey, by the way, great job. I'm calling it so closely.
Well, it hasn't happened yet. We just think it's
Well,
going to happen.
but you're halfway home. You're pitching a no-hitter. You're in the fifth, so good.
sir.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now let's see if there's any speaker cards on this item. Clay, you could be finished.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks.
Sir, we have one from Truth.
That was a fun report. I think my favorite part was the part about feverishly spending that American Ruination Plan Act money. I mean, you just got to hurry up, get that spent because it's going to run out. But I think it was supposed to run out last year. I don't know. What do I know? As long as you got it programmed, it could be spent right on anything because COVID. I mean, I don't know what that has to do with the people being in the hospital. Get your projects done though, right? And let's see. We have the 3.3 million transitioning a portion of the city's fleet to allegedly zero-emission vehicles, the electric cars, some people call them lithium bombs, in order to comply with CARB, the California Air Resources Board mandates, hoping for rebates from SDG&E, who is the only entity that's going to profit off such a transition. What a coincidence. It may be worthwhile for the city to seek a waiver for that nonsense. That includes lithium batteries that are harming the planet with their toxic lithium fires, because MTS is going to consider doing that. So why can't El Cajon? Why can't everybody ask for a waiver then? Let's see. And you have an extra $400,000 for firefighter strike teams responding to extra fire. And a lot of people like to blame homeless people, but it's also the professional arsonist on the windiest of days, and things like battery energy storage sites, which the county refuses to address, and that definitely includes sick Supervisor Joel Anderson. Sick today. Yeah, okay. And let's see. Oh, those cars, almost forgot about the EVs. It was great to hear that they cannot be charged in an emergency situation. They're also full of combustible lithium batteries. So it's like, what could go wrong? Let's do it and find out. I think that's the state's motto. And you had $43,970 to police IT equipment. And is that for the city's smart city plan by any chance? It could be related. Maybe in the future. We'll find out, huh? And $70,000 of the balance to increase the Wells Park indoor soccer and pickleball. And I just like to ask this question for fun. It's very triggering, so I'm going to do it. What is pickleball? Thank you.
Hey, Truth, I do want to tell you, in all seriousness, I've heard the president say that he's going to address these unrealistic EV mandates. And I do hope and pray that we'll get some relief from Washington.
Sounds good. I hope so. Thank you.
Is there anybody else?
No other speakers, sir.
All right, it's back to council for discussion or a motion.
I have good news on the MTS front, because I sit on the MTS board where we said, hey, we were kind of ahead of the game in buying electric things, the board, so we were able to get credits and not have to buy as many new electric vehicles, because the early adoption of electric allowed us to get credits. I believe the city, that same vein of thought, has come along, and we're able to use or pursue credits for those electric vehicles that we bought, thus potentially softening the blow of how many electric vehicles to buy. So that knowledge from one agency carried over to the other, and glad to see the city manager is on top of that.
Well done.
Move adoption?
Yeah. Is there a second? Second. All right, please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
Thank you. The second and last legislative report for today, item 9, is regarding the 2025 City Council Action Plan. City Manager Graham Mitchell will tell us all about this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm pleased to present the draft 2025 City Council Action Plan, or as we refer to as the CAP. As you recall, back on January 14th, the City Council hosted its annual goal-setting session, and from that, we've been able to take that discussion and boil it down into a document that you can then consider for adoption. This agenda report will cover 4 areas. One will present the draft City Council Action Plan. There are specifically 2 goals we're looking for some clarification on because we were unclear of what the council's intention was as we regrouped and rehashed the conversations from the council. We still were left confused, so we'll ask for some clarification there. And then I wanted to present some preliminary next year's budget numbers, just so there's some context and help give staff some understanding of, one, prioritization, but also how we want to accomplish the goals that the council set forth while trying to live within our means as well. And then lastly, I wanted to showcase and show off a pilot software program that we're using to not only manage the City Council Action Plan goals, but also provide some interesting transparency to the public that I don't think many jurisdictions use. So with that, based on the goal setting session, the City Council reaffirmed its 6 priorities, which are identified here on the screen and in the staff report. Also during that goal setting session, 28 goals or objectives were identified. Staff took those, identified major accomplishments, tasks, milestones that need to occur, and identified about 90 of them. They are included in the staff report as part of a document that we presented, and we hope that accomplishing these 90 tasks will accomplish the goals set forth, that the council set forth. So with that, I'll go through each of the 6 priorities. I'll talk about the goals really high level. I won't get into the tasks unless the council has specific questions about the tasks, and we can open that up and have a deeper conversation about that. So with city beautification, there are 5 specific goals. The illegal dumping from apartment complexes is a carryover from the previous year. There's a goal relating to marrying volunteers that are interested in helping our city with seniors that have either code violations or some landscaping challenges. There's a goal about doing a better job and managing our third-party contractors, more landscaping on city street projects, and then exploring a pilot program of sidewalk panels that light up and see if the feasibility of that. So those are the 5 beautification goals. The 2 infrastructure goals related to an enhanced capital improvement program review. Our goal is to present a 5-year capital improvement program with expenditures, needs, expenditures, and funding sources, so you can see where those gaps are from year to year, looking out into the future, not just 1 year in advance. And then also we talked about, there's a carryover goal. If there's an opportunity to fill in the gap of a sidewalk at like 4 houses, or add some additional street lights, or some small little capital improvement programs in the neighborhoods, potentially pulling out some one-time general fund monies to make those kind of projects happen. So we'll continue to look for those. Under economic development, there were 6 goals. Parkway Plaza continues to be a priority of the city, and in fact, we'll be bringing some agenda items forward in the next couple meetings, talking about some of the progress we've made there. A focus on our downtown, specifically our property-based improvement district. Council had a wonderful workshop last night, and some great direction was given. We'll continue to follow up on that direction. Creation of a vacant lot incentive program. This is another carryover program from the year before. I'll go to the last one. Identify some ways to program the space around the Magnolia so it becomes economically viable. We have a lot of real estate and landscape areas that we can potentially maximize in a different way. So looking at some ways to program that space. The two areas that we weren't quite sure of are explore opportunities for innovation centers around the airport. And I don't know if that refers to the Aerotropolis that the ECEDC was exploring at one point. And then this concept of innovative events. So we want to talk about those now that we can get some clarity, and then we can come back and identify some tasks specifically related to those.
Council?
Innovative events, I remember talking about an alternative to a fireworks show. And I floated the idea of a drone show. I don't know the expense,
I'll give you a little bit of expense. You may want to take it off after you hear this. So our Parks and Recreation staff was at a trade show, and there was a drone display group. And they started asking, like, how much does it cost? And they said, well, let me ask you, how much do you spend on your fireworks right now? And I believe it's $28,000, $25,000. And the vendor pretty much said, because I think he realized we weren't serious players in the game, said, oh, for $25,000, you wouldn't even be able to even notice that there was a drone in the air. So, so drones are a possibility, but I have a feeling it would be dramatically more expensive. So.
you're saying we could only get 3 drones in the air
Pretty
for
much.
$25,000.
Yeah, with 2 little blinking lights.
Yeah, okay, well, you can cross that one off the list.
Okay. And then explore the opportunities for innovative sites. I think there's some opportunities now that we have some staff capacity to focus on economic development. Retail sales, frankly, are not where the money is. It's business to business sales. That's where I think there's some opportunities. In the last quarterly sales tax report newsletter that I gave you, if you looked at the top 20, there's a couple of businesses that we probably have never walked in because they're not the kind of place where you go buy a pair of shoes or jeans or a belt. We would like to sort of focus the little industrial area that we currently have around the airport and focus not only on the innovation, but also sales tax generating businesses, and maybe create some incentive programs for brokers to bring those types of businesses rather than just warehousing or service related. So if the council's okay with that expanded view, I think there's some value of keeping that on our radar, if council's okay with that.
I think it's a great idea. A quick question. I know there was legislation at the state level to get rid of sales tax sharing agreements. Did that pass, or can we still do that as a city? Do you know?
I know every year there's some erosion of that. I think we are still allowed to do sales tax sharing agreements.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. Maybe let's. I mean, I think it's a great tool if we're going to bring in brokers, and if we see a business that we really like as a tool, and maybe fine tune what the law says and how quickly it's eroding. Maybe get as many as possible before it completely erodes.
Okay.
Is this something the East County Economic Development Council can lead? Isn't that kind of their charge?
That we would lean on them to be part of that. They'd be a
I'd love to see a business
helper, yes.
that needs the airport for freight or something. And
Yes.
there's not many locations that have an airport next to them, and must be some businesses that rely on having an airport that might be a good fit.
Yes, for sure. Okay.
So,
Did we have a slide on homelessness on our goal setting?
You haven't got there quite yet.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to hit these two since these are the ones we had questions on. I think I got enough response to do some things with
Okay,
them.
thank you.
Okay, moving on to homelessness. Speaking of homelessness, there was 4 goals related to homelessness. Promoting some of the success programs that we've had, and in fact, I'm gonna dive deeper when I show you the transparency portal that we've created. Increase the quality of life task force. That is a very expensive program, and I'll share some details with you about that in a little bit. Some analysis of the impacts that Prop 36 has had, not only on law enforcement and crime, but also on homelessness. That was one of the goals that the council set forward, and then revamping the city's homeless dashboard and be a little bit more user-friendly. So those are the homeless goals that you guys had identified.
Really quickly, regarding the analysis of the impacts of Prop 36, can we engage the district attorney to get some data from them as well?
We'll have to get that data
Okay.
from them, because that's,
Okay, great.
yeah, they'll be the ones that will have that information. Moving along to public safety, there were 5 or 6 goals related to public safety. One had to do with Engine 208. We had our workshop the other day about that, and so there's I'll come back and talk about the costs related to that. Ongoing reducing congregate care facility calls. That's a carryover from the previous year. Expanding some engagement opportunities with our police department, integrating all of this different tech that we currently have and integrating it so there's some uniformity, and also there's some, I guess I could say, magnifying its power by them talking with each other a little bit more than they do now. Council talked about updating policies on privacy, specifically related to cameras and drones, and then also a broader threat assessment, to more than just fire hydrants, but also just contingency plans. As you know, the state of California, or you may have heard this, the state of California is updating all of its fire hazard maps. The map for San Diego County was supposed to already have been delivered, but due to the Los Angeles fires, it's got pushed back. I believe it's going to be made available on March 24th or March 25th. So it will have a potential impact on several of our residents that live along canyons, especially in the Fletcher Hills area. So having a more robust conversation about not only preparedness and our ability to meet some of those threats, but maybe some areas where residents can take some proactivity in doing some additional fire education. So we thought that there's a good opportunity and timing for that. Moving on to the miscellaneous goals, there were 5 miscellaneous goals. The Veterans Memorial, which we talked a little bit about today, the exploration of a Citizens Academy, and some of these are budget dependent, and some of these things just may not fit into the budget this next year, but it's good to have them as a placeholder to explore. We had talked about some alternative means to communicate city events rather than through digital, which we've gotten really good at, but not everyone has that ability, as Mr. Goebel talked about last night at the workshop. Increase the usage of the app, and we said rather than subscribers, getting new subscribers, but also users of the app. So it's one thing to download it and then never use it. It's another to engage with it. And so we have some metrics there. And then last but not least, create some opportunities to ensure that the Magnolia is relying less and less on the general fund year after year. So those were the goals. I got my clarifications from the council, but before we talk about budget and other things, does council have any questions, feedback, or any clarification that you would have about the goals?
Well, this is maybe too high level, but I'm throwing it out there. Would it be better suited to have our goals align with our fiscal year?
It's funny, I was talking with the staff about this, and maybe even moving our goal setting up to November, because we're in the throes. I mean, Mr. Shane will tell you that it's almost too late to adjust the budget. That's an exaggeration. But I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into that. So having the goal setting session in November or even October would help us prepare for the next fiscal year.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense from a calendar standpoint and the New Year's resolution for the new year, new goals. But I think practically, let's align our goals with our budget. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. So, yeah.
Anybody else? Okay. Thanks, Greg.
Okay.
Let's see if there's any speaker cards.
Can I go over some budget stuff really fast?
Oh, sure.
So just really quickly, there were 3 goals that are I'd call budget big ticket items. The staffing 1/3 of Engine 208. That's about a little under $1 million. That's adding 3 additional staff. increasing the quality of life task force. As you know, we go out 2 days a week to do cleanup and we do outreach. In order to do 7 days a week, including holiday and weekends, that would cost an additional $4 million. It's a really big item. We'd have to bring on 16 additional staff. Just doubling what we do now is about $2 million. We think if the council was okay with it, we could spend about $100,000 and pay for some overtime and just do saturation detailed opportunities or details. But to have that level of coverage, it's pretty intensive in terms of staff. What we do now is intensive on staff. And then Parkway Plaza, it's probably about another $500,000 to take it to the next level. So in terms of, I think there's some value in having a conversation about some of these are one-time expenditures. Parkway Plaza, for example, is a one-time expenditure. For me, it's easy to justify to the city council that this would be a good use of reserve funds because it's a one-time expenditure. There's a potential ROI. The ongoing costs of increased quality of life, staffing of Engine 208, typically I would not say you should use reserves for that. However, for the last, at least since I've been your city manager, we have socked money away year after year into the general fund reserve. I don't see that happening next year. I'll show you some data about that. But there could be some strategic usage of your general fund reserve, but it has to be very strategic and it has to be very purposeful and it has to have some abilities to turn the switch off when needed to use some of your general fund reserves for those purposes. I'm not asking you to make a decision about that today, but I think there's some value in exploring the use of those monies to meet short-term priorities. And you could justify the upstaffing for the quality of life could have some value there because you can see that if you hit it hard, it could have some long-term impact and maybe you can start tapering it off over a period of time. So let me just show some data. This shows fiscal year, the fiscal year we just went through, our current fiscal year, and then next fiscal year. And this is relying on last year's 5-year projections. Mr. Shane mentioned that he's working on this current 5-year projection, so this may change a little bit. But as you can see, we had to dip into the general fund reserve to pay for the overhires and some of the additional projects that we purposefully, strategically took money out of the general fund to do. We do see that with softening sales tax and maybe flattening property tax to a certain degree, that the revenues are not going to meet expenditures next year, assuming we do nothing. So our job as staff is to ensure that you have a balanced budget. So we will be presenting about 5% in cuts to get to a balanced budget. What's difficult is when we put the strain of a 5% cut on top of additional expenditures. That is our cross to bear for right now, and our goal is to present the council with a responsible budget that can accomplish these goals. But I think it's important for council to understand that there is going to be some decision making. There will be some trade-offs. For us, it's helpful to understand, is there a priority? Is one of these more important than the other? What are your thoughts on the strategic planned use of general fund reserves for some of these or any of these? And that will help guide us as we get ready to present the budget to the city council. So with that, any thoughts that you have that you want to share with staff that would help us move forward?
I'm sure we do. Yeah. Michelle?
Okay. On the quality of life, I can see increasing the staff and increasing the time that is spent out there. But the problem is that, okay, what does that entail? Because where do we take them? ECTLC is full with a waiting list. Away back home, I mean, it just depends on if they have a place to go. We can shuffle them off onto county. We can shuffle them off to Caltrans property, where they hop, skip, and jump from one jurisdiction to another. where do we take them? If they accept services, we've lost our housing navigator at Home Start. If we increase our staff to increase enforcement, where are they going to go? And I mean, I'm all for increasing enforcement, but we don't have any bite to our bark, and they're just moving down the street. And I guess that's my question, is like, if we go to put in a new shelter, then we have people saying, no, we don't want a shelter. So other than rounding people up and putting them on a bus and shipping them out to the desert, which is, you can't do that because that's a constitutional issue, what is the purpose of increasing staff? And this is what I'm asking my colleagues. Other than increasing our staff and increasing our money that is being spent, what do? Can we arrest them? Can we put them in our jails? Because what happens? Then again, you're getting into, it's not against the law to be poor. It's not against the law to be homeless. I mean, I don't know. I want to do something, and I want to see us increase the quality of life, and I want to get these people out of the drainage channels and get them off the sides of the road. But then again, where do we put them? And I need some answers from someone, because frankly, I don't know what the answer is.
Well, your comment brings up a question. Graham, are we at the point now where we have no beds to put homeless individuals?
We do have beds. There is a waiting list to get into the family program at ECTLC, but because we do fund it, we have guaranteed beds available to us. So if a police officer brings somebody there, they have to make room for that person.
Okay.
But how many people do we have on our street right now?
I don't know. The last point in time count had like 280. We'll see what the upcoming one
Will
says.
ECTLC, if by a miracle we got 200 and some odd people off the street, will they take in 200 and some, I mean...
You think that's a possibility?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking,
Well,
Bill.
my 30 years of working with the homeless population in the hospitals is that they'll refuse treatment. And that's what our police officers tell us, that 95% of the time they refuse treatment. So I think realistically we're talking about getting a handful of people off the street. And then I guess what I'm saying is we get to the point where we don't have any place to put somebody, that's a different conversation.
Right, but is it worth the $2 to $4 million
It may not be.
for a handful of people? That's what I'm saying. We're not going to get much bang for our buck.
No, I agree with you that the juice might not be worth the squeeze.
Right. And
But I don't agree with you in the sense that we don't do it because we're afraid of running out of space.
no, absolutely. I agree with you on that. I absolutely agree with you on that. And I think that we do need to do something.
I had a thought, Graham. Obviously, this is a lot more expensive than I thought about when I brought it up. And that's fine. That's the way life works sometimes. But can we be more strategic about it? I think one of the problems that we have is that the people that are abusing the streets, and I do think they're abusing the streets. I don't think I think that they're making a decision as to how best to work the system. And one of the ways they can do that is they know that on Saturday and Sunday and holidays, our team is not going to be out there. Could we mix it up so that we have the same number of days going out, but nobody knows when that's going to happen?
I think it's possible. I mean, we try to operate as efficiently as we can, and the most efficient way is Tuesdays and Thursdays. You schedule police schedules around that. And to your point, Mr. Mayor, when we've cleaned up on non-Thursdays, people are shocked. They're like, "What? It's on Thursday today."
Right.
So they know when we're out, right? And so there is some value in that, and we can explore some of those things and again, some of those details that we did last year too.
Also, is there a compromise? I mean, we don't have to go 7 days a week. Could we add one more day a week? What would that look like? I'd like to have all those numbers and thoughts. Just because it doesn't work in total, doesn't mean that there's not a strategic way to increase it so we can have more results.
We can modify the goal to look at that for sure.
All right.
I'd like to see that. I mean, I like your idea. I think we need to increase it, number one, and if one day is enough to do it, that's great. And I think that we do need to get these people out the street. Totally agree with you. Because frankly, it's gotten out of control, and whatever we can do, I just don't want to see the $2 to $4 million for 20 people.
I don't, considering the fact that we are scrambling around trying to figure out how we're going to come up with $2 to $4 million for the fire department,
Right.
and it does seem like a lofty goal to put that ahead of a fire department. So, yeah, I agree with you. Obviously, we're not going to be able to afford that.
Right. And if we're going to come up with, I think that if we're going to come up with something more robust regarding our homeless problem, maybe this is something, again, we need to go to the public. And maybe we should go, it's uncomfortable, but maybe we need to go to the public and go to the residents and see what they want to do. And, you know, it's just a thought.
All right, well, you'll bring it back?
Yeah, so I would suggest that the council adopt the city council action plan, and then we'll continue to massage that one and give you updates
I think
on
there
that.
might be some more questions, though.
Perfect.
Yes.
Phil or Steve, anything?
I don't think it's good financial sense to use reserves for operations, even if you're guessing we might cover it in 5 years, because what if you don't? Then what if you staff something that it's very hard for the public to see a government service stop. It's very easy to start one. It's very difficult to stop one. And that's not good for the public to see that go away. So I'm a little more hesitant to dip into reserves to start something that I don't know that I will keep
I agree
going.
with you.
I'm going to take a different approach. I generally agree that we shouldn't use a savings account to fund ongoing expenses. And, you know, my colleagues have said, you know, maybe we need to go to the public, which we call it is a tax increase. This is public funding, and 99% of the calls and complaints I get is homelessness. And so I kind of see it as here's what the city services could look like if the tax increase occurred. This is what we commit to. And this, if we can make an impact on the street, a material impact that the residents could see, then they say, oh my gosh, like the city, there's not homeless in the street anymore. There's a big cleanup. And then all of a sudden it starts to taper off. Well, what happened? Well, then that's the argument is, well, we don't have the money for it. Do you want to pay more taxes? That could be an opportunity to show the public what the tax increase would look like. And I'm not advocating for a tax increase. I just want to make sure everyone sees that. But if we're going to spend any public funding, it should be on the number one problem we have in our city and what residents talk about the most. And so I like the mayor's idea of it being strategic and a slow ramp up, as long as we have an exit plan, a very clear, defined exit plan with regard to staffing. And but all that to say, like I said, I'm not generally in support of using savings for an ongoing cost, but I can't tell you how much the public, I think the public would welcome it. So,
Steve?
I agree with you in a sense that there's a lot of frustration out there currently with the homeless situation. Additional funding would allow us to to have another engine would allow us to have 10 more police officers, would allow us to have more public works people. Measure P, I think it was in 2022. Yeah. One of the reasons why I think it failed is the voters saw that money would go towards homeless services. And I just, in my circle, the people are saying, we're done spending money on homeless services. We want homeless enforcement. And so if the public saw, I think there's compassion fatigue at this point. Yes. People have said, everyone has had multiple chances to, our ECTLC even takes people in that aren't even from El Cajon. And we do offer compassion for those that really want to get off the street, and it works. Same thing with Meridian, 78% success rate. If you were to go to the public and say, any additional funding would go for enforcement, cleanup, and public safety, more officers on the street, that's a whole lot easier sell than homeless services or additional government or things like that. That's probably in the realm, like you say, of the public. Is that what they would be willing to do if it was for that item?
Yeah. I agree with that assessment and your train of thought. Yeah, 100%. So I guess if I were to give staff direction, it would be in line with what everybody else has said. In maybe we don't jump to $2 to $4 million a year, like the mayor said. Maybe it's 1 day a week or something like that. As long as there's some kind of an exit plan that's known to ramp it down. So yeah.
You know, it'd be interesting to say if the city had another $6 or $7 million, what would these things cost? You're almost saying if the citizens were willing to fund these things, you would get 7-day-a-week things. You would have 10 more officers for enforcement, 5 more for public works. You'd have an engine that would cut response time down by 2 minutes in some parts of the city. I think that has a lot of value to put together for the public. Kind of a precursor to some kind of educational campaign.
I think it's a good idea. We have 2 other things that are on that list. One was the money that we had talked about in the workshop we had for the fire department about the concept of starting with 1/3, which I think was $870,000. I'm not uncomfortable with the using the reserve to pay for part of that. I'm also the Parkway Plaza, $500,000 seems, if we don't fix this Parkway Plaza situation, we're going to have lots of other problems in the future. So I think that's a good use of that money.
Yeah, I would agree. And I really see Parkway Plaza as El Cajon's way out of its financial constraints.
I do too.
I mean, what the Hunden partners, even if we accomplished half of what they said we could with regard to the property tax and the sales tax, it's going to solve this. And so that's got to be in the conversation, non-negotiable, or else we're going to be, whether we're here or there's another council here, we're going to be spinning our wheels with funding for the next 10 to 20 years, unless someone waves a magic wand and there's a solve for all of it, which isn't going to happen. It's not going to happen at the state level. So that's my goal, is Parkway Plaza long term. I'd be okay with 208 starting with general fund. And I just want to reiterate, I'm not prepared to go to the public for a tax increase. I just want to make sure everyone knows that. We just asked them 2 years ago. We asked them this year or last year. So I think there's still some options to explore outside of that.
I like 870,000. I'm not a great fan of once we start it, but I think that's not insurmountable number year after year. And the benefits of the purpose of public safety, number one, it's just, I've come back and said it before, an engine coming from Lake Jennings Road or an engine coming from Channel Road out Lakeside, it just takes longer to get here. And when you're talking, they have a saying, I think it's time is tissue or something like that. And the longer you wait, if you only have 5 minutes of time before things go south, then every minute counts. And that seems like a really good priority to use that money that way. It's not much.
And I'll point out, we are trying to get a grant to cover a big chunk of the $500,000 for the Parkway Plaza. So, I mean, we'll
Rolling
be
the dice a
working on
little
that.
bit, but.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have all the feedback you need, or do you need more?
I got it. I got what I needed. And can I show you a couple interesting things we're doing about transparency really fast?
Sure.
So I must.
Transparent about it.
We're doing it's a pilot program. It's a software program that will go up on our website, and it will have some dashboards and some abilities to dive in deeper on where council is with their goals. This is kind of what it would look like on the website. It would identify each of the 6 priorities, and there's a little bar at the bottom that would show almost a measurement of how far along you are in meeting these goals. Yeah. You can see we're almost not started because we haven't even adopted it, but we've actually made some progress on a few things. And I'll just assume I clicked homelessness. I didn't do this live because I'm not sure if it would work live, but if I clicked homelessness, I would come to sort of a portal for homelessness, and then it would identify the 4 specific goals that the city council identified as part of this priority. And let's say I clicked on the Promote El Cajon's Homeless Program Success Stories, and then it would show again, where we're all at there with the different goals, and you can see what's been accomplished shows up in green, what's shows up in red is what's being worked on, gray means there's nothing to report, and let's say there's obviously something that we're not going to be able to get to that will not be completed, that will show up as red. So you can kind of see what's being worked on and what's not being worked on. And you can even the public can even dig deeper, or the council can dig deeper into the very specific tasks. I know this is really hard to read, but this is the goal for promoting homeless program success stories. It talks about having some initial meetings with stakeholders at the staff level, stakeholders outside. We're going to look at creating a video where we're going to follow 3 to 4 families around for a whole year and kind of see their experience and what worked, what didn't work, and how they got from living in a tent on the streets into a permanent home. So we're going to work on that. That'll take all year, and you can measure and watch our progress on each of these goals on this transparency sheet. So anyway, so with that, I think, council, you gave me the feedback that I'm looking for, and we're just here to present the city council action plan for your adoption.
Before we go any further, though, let's see if there's any speaker cards on this item.
Yes, sir. We have 2. The first one is truth.
Hi, Truth.
Hi, guys. I'm going to point out some highlights of some of the things you guys said. There was tax opportunity, easier sell, round them up and ship them to the desert, working the system, abusing the streets, and that one was the first. Very interesting conversations. Definitely, you need a chart to show the different scenarios and cost. Although I will say, when you spend a lot of time in downtown San Diego, El Cajon looks super clean. I don't know what you guys are complaining about. For the general city beautification, maybe some more American flags, maybe more lit up signs, maybe work on 2nd Street for beautification and safety, including for cleanups and better pedestrian safety at busy intersections. And in there was sidewalk panels that light up. Oh, what is that? Because if El Cajon can make it happen and ensure the panels don't end up damaged, then it may be something that every city needs. But do lighted sidewalk panels take precedence over missing sidewalk segments and unlit neighborhoods? And for Parkway, if you can't turn it into another UTC, it should probably become an event center with a food hall or something. There's alternative means to communicate city events. Is that billboards, posters, booths at farmers markets? I want to know what the innovation is. And why is there no due date for compiling a list of properties to share with volunteer groups for landscaping for seniors? Shouldn't ensuring city does not incur liability be the #1 priority? and develop new events to attract more people to the downtown Main Street area. So my recommendation, how about some cultural festivals? Example, Chaldean Cultural Event or a Lunar New Year event. I don't think East County has any Lunar New Year celebrations. And innovation for areas around airport, does that mean Amazon or some mixed-use stack and packs? And as far as the drone shows, not only are they more expensive than fireworks, they're actually more dangerous. There was recently a child killed and a bunch of people injured by a drone show. I can't remember which city or state that was. I like the documentary about the homeless program success stories. I would expedite the meetings to reduce calls to congregate care facilities to sooner than May, because our elders, you guys, especially Phil, should be our number one priority. Let's see. Updating policies on privacy and new tech, including the dangerous drones, probably should have already been done. Hopefully there's going to be a public process with possibly a commission working with the police department on the end result. 2 town hall meetings about emergency preparedness should be expedited before October, because the hottest times of the year are in the summer months, so why not work on it now? In fact, SDG&E is planning a battery energy storage site fire facility for El Cajon, so it sounds like fire season is actually going to be all year round soon. And I wonder if Trump's conflict of interest friend Elon will save us from his own Tesla cars. Thank you.
Last speaker is Brenda Hammond.
Hi again. You know, I'm going to touch on the homelessness part. And I'm not going to say anything bad about that outreach group. Being out there as long as I have in all cities, downtown San Diego, East County, South Bay, not North County. But what I've seen out there, and maybe you guys could check this out too, and I've said it in the other cities, the churches. The churches on Sundays and worship Wednesdays pretty much allow the homeless to stand at the driveways and collect money and food, and guess what they do with it? They give it to the churches. In exchange, and believe me, I've talked with some of them out there. In exchange, they get showers and clothes, which is nice. But giving money, homeless people giving money to a church and food to a church, to me is not very good. Believe me, they've tried it with me. And I said, no. Not only no, but no. No. And mostly it's the pop-up churches. You've heard me talk about the pop-up churches. Oh my God, G-A-U or G-A-W-D, that prey on people, P-R-E-Y, not P-R-A-Y. So just to keep in mind that there are some churches out there that are sending people out to collect money and food and bring it back to the church. Not good. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Okay. We need to adopt the plan if everybody's ready to do that, or more discussion.
Yeah, I'll move adoption.
Second.
All right, please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
All right, there are no commissioner reports on today's agenda. We're at activity reports. The first one is mine. And I've got to be honest, I've not been very good about writing them all down, so I promised Tracy I would this time. So I went to the Masters Breakfast as a speaker, the Stand With Us Gala, the Car Show Workshop, the Sandag Public Safety Meeting, Senator Jones's press conference, meeting with constituent Sabatoma and Louis Cazares and Rob Cartwright. I went to the State of the City address. I did the San Diego Gun Owners radio show. I met with constituent Tom Tamar. Went to the fire workshop. I was on the Kim Yeater radio show, the Sedeco Security Group grand opening. I did interviews on Fox News, channels 8, 10, 7, KUSI. I was on NBC's Politically Speaking. I won One American News and News Nation and the Mark Larson Show. Before we go on to the other activities reports, I guess we have a speaker card?
Yes, sir. We have a speaker card for number 11, which is Councilmember Goebbels, and that would be Truth.
I probably should have signed up for yours too, Bill. That would have been fun. But I didn't get to go to that fun press conference. I was at the public safety meeting. But it's okay, because I like messing with Steve. It's very fun. So Borders Committee is actually spelled B-O-R-D-E-R-S, not B-O-A-R-D-E-R-S. Different kind of border. Actually, I'm not sure what the other kind of border is. Someone who stays somewhere? You can feel committed when you're at a Sandag meeting. That is true. And I did see Steve there at that joint session of regional borders and transportation committees. He was talking to Carolina Chavez and somebody else who I can't remember. That is all. Thank you.
All right, so we have council activity report for Mr. Goebel.
It's nowhere close to what you have been doing in the city, so I appreciate your advocacy for alcohol, but
My problem is I always forget to turn it in, so.
I got it. Yes, mine is as reported, with the correction of borders to borders.
Ms. Ortiz?
Yeah, mine's as reported.
Michelle?
As reported.
Okay. Although Sandag meetings can be spelled B-O-A-R-D. How's that B-O-R-E-D? B-O-R-E. Yeah, okay. Well, see, even my joke didn't work. Okay. That brings us to, there's no joint council member reports, no general information items, no first or second readings of ordinances, and no closed session on today's agenda. So that brings us to adjournment, the adjourned regular joint meeting of the El Cajon City Council, El Cajon Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency, held this 25th day of February 2025, is now adjourned till Tuesday, March 11th, 2025 at 3 o'clock p.m. Thank you all. Have a safe trip home, and we'll see you on the 11th.